There's a lot of change going on here in South Florida. We got a lot to talk about tonight.
Hey, Big Seth, so many people are afraid of change, man, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But sometimes change is good. There's definitely a lot to talk about, and I am, I'm pumped for tonight. No matter what, man. Every time we get an opportunity to go on here and spill our guts and be ourselves, our authentic selves, man, it's a lot of fun. And I know we've got the legendary Sevach with us. I know we got Douglie DoWrong. He's with us tonight too, man. And you, Big Seth, being the man rocking that that merino sweater,
hockey sweater. How about that?
The sweater, you got the sweater going tonight.
Yeah, and it's a Mitchell and Ness. This is not, no disrespect to people trying to get those jerseys from overseas that come over on the slow boat 30 days, but this is a Mitchell and Ness authentic, straight from Merino Enterprises / Ralph Stringer Closet.
So you're saying Mitchell and Ness does it in the USA?
I am saying that it is an authentic Mitchell and Ness product.
I mean,
and licensed. I think that's the word I'm looking for. That it's a licensed. All right,
there we go.
Product.
I got some shit with swooshes on it. I don't know where it came from.
They paid for the right to overcharge. That's what I'm saying. But hey, man, you just nailed it. So joined by two of Dolphins Nation's finest, always the legendary Sevach, producer to the Fish Tank, but the czar of Dolphins YouTube, the king of Dolphins YouTube, Douglie DoWrong. Is this your first time? We've been hanging with you before. Is this your first time diving in with us?
Yeah, I think this is my first time on here, which is an absolute honor. So I'm blessed.
Bro, that's what's up right there, Big Seth. How'd you pull this off, man?
Well,
it's a busy man right there.
It was a shot in the dark. It was like a trade deadline, last hurrah.
You got before 4:00 yesterday?
I got it. Yes. And I was blowing them up. I felt badly. But I started thinking about this. And I'm like, OJ McDuffie was a first-round draft choice. I'm just here. Hear me out. First-round draft choice, All-American, led the NFL in receptions, 2-time Dolphins MVP. I spent 8 years working for the Miami Dolphins. I've been blessed to work alongside Hall of Famers. But, man, there's nothing that's going to move the needle more on your show than Douglie DoWrong.
Right.
There is not a media member. There's not a – Teron Armstead, he starts a podcast within 3 weeks, maybe less. He's like, I need to get Douglie DoWrong on the show if I want to grow this damn thing.
Right.
Douglie is a YouTube flipping machine. And so I am grateful that you would spend some time with us.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I got the text this morning. I'm like, how do I say no to that? Come on, I'll make it work. I got to get on this show.
Well, I'm glad that you did. I'm very excited that you did. And there is a lot to talk about. I think it's really cool to get the perspective from the former player. Typically, we have the media member on here. And now you're in this crossover space. You're in this crossover space of fan turned content creator. And you've got the Dolphins Collective. I jumped on the Collective last night, Juice.
Yeah.
Sevach, you don't even want to hear this as we're looking at people trickle in. They had 1,150 people watching at one time.
Yeah, that's
I don't know if, and it might have been even higher than that, but I'm like, I don't even want to look at what the total number is now, total views. But dude, how did you, and I'm burying the lead here, but talk to us about how you've been able to just take over YouTube in that way.
I think a good portion of it for my channel is just the continuity, where it's I'm just constantly putting out minimum 15-minute videos, sometimes 8 times a day, depending on what's going on. But with the Collective, it's like a combination of a love-hate. Because there's people on there that love, one of us, right? Me, TD, Alan, Omar, and there's people on there that hate one of us.
Yeah.
And I got my haters, which I just sit back and I laugh. I don't know, Doug doesn't know what he's talking about. One guy sent a whole paragraph in the comment section below how they need to Grier me and get me off the show.
Damn. Wow.
Damn.
So I think a lot of it has to do with they want to hear what we have to say, the different perspectives, but also they want to see our reaction to just the misery that's happening right now. So it's It's a give and take. So I because there's sometimes where we get like 600 and people don't really care, but it's like, oh, a trade deadline and let's see what they have to talk about.
Right.
So
Just 600.
yeah,
They only sit there with 600. So yeah, you guys are killing it, doing a great job. So congrats to all of that. And you just mentioned they want to Chris Grier you. So what a great segue. He's a pro at this, Juice. He's a pro running these lives. Look, fellas, Chris Grier was with the Dolphins when I worked there. I know he wasn't a general manager at that time, but he was with the Dolphins when I worked there. That's how long he's been a member of the Miami Dolphins organization. Been the general manager for almost a decade. I would say there's no more polarizing member of the media than Omar Kelly. Tua Tagovailoa is probably the most polarizing sports figure in the history of South Florida sports. But Chris Grier, I don't even know what's been polarizing. That dude has just been in the fire for quite some time now. And he's no longer the general manager of the Dolphins. We find that out during the bye week. I guess my first question, I'll start with you, Juice. Were you surprised by the news? Maybe not necessarily that it happened, but when it happened.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think everybody was been talking about this for weeks leading up to this. You know what I mean? I think my biggest surprise was that it was not that it was just Chris by himself. I think that was the biggest surprise that I had when the whole thing came down. I thought if anything, it'd be a package deal because from what we understood, everything about this team was the synergy between Mike and Chris, and they collab on the picks and all this other stuff, and then and next it was Chris that got the axe and Mike did not, and when they didn't do it together, I knew Mike was safe at that point, Big Seth. Because why would you do it all at once instead of having separate days of like, all right, this guy's going down, the next guy, so I figured that Mike was safe at that point. So I thought Mike would be first. I really did, because honestly, Chris brings the guys, but Mike's team is the ones out there on the field that's underperforming, in my opinion.
Right.
And on this show, we never call for anybody's job, but if anybody was going to get axed, I thought it'd be Mike first. And it looks like Mike is safe, which is cool. We'll see what happens the last 8 games of the season. But man, when I saw Chris, I was like, wow, we knew something was going to happen. We'd already heard through the grapevine that there were some rumblings going on in the owner's suite that night after the Ravens game, and that something was going to go down. And sure as hell, something did go down. And it was Chris Grier as the GM for the team. After you said, been here for a couple decades plus, obviously about 10 years as the GM. And things just didn't work out. But yeah, I was shocked who went down. I knew something was going down, and hell, we're known. And Doug, this, the Dolphins are known for being in the news in some negative way, some negative fashion, and we did not disappoint that Friday.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you on all of it. I have some thoughts, but I'd love to hear Doug's thoughts. Where were you on all of this?
See, I don't want to hate on the guy, and I'm not one for celebrating someone losing their job. I thought he should have went with Flores, if I'm being honest with you. I think he was, he had 2 regimes, and then he got a 3rd regime that he got to man. And sitting here in 2025, we are no different really than we were in 2019. And we had a worse roster in 2019. So, I knew at some point Grier was going to go. I just didn't think it was going to be at that point. I like OJ said, I thought it was going to be McDaniel first. But it seems like they're trying to, there's the tinfoil hats out there thinking it's the organic tank and, they're keeping McDaniel. But it seems like, it's a Ross money situation. Like he just paid the man. So if I paid you millions of dollars, I don't want you to take that millions of dollars and go sit at home. At least finish what you started, and then we'll make our decision at the end of the year. But yeah, Grier being gone was something that needed to happen. I just really hope, and we'll probably get into this, I hope they don't handcuff themselves by the new GM having to work with certain people like they handcuffed McDaniel. Like I really hope that they open it up. They'll just let whoever comes in get the best candidate and have him have control.
Yeah, that is interesting. And Juice mentioned the term package deal, and just hearing what you're saying as well, Doug. Like, I think that was from the media's perspective and certainly fans' perspective, we kind of lumped the big three together, right? And but that doesn't necessarily mean that the guy who's writing the checks and making the decisions is lumping them all together. And I do find it curious, just like OJ said, that when there's going to be no impact on the field against Buffalo with Chris Grier not sitting in a suite somewhere at the game.
Right.
It was not when we watched that Baltimore game, and that was kind of the last straw. Chris Grier he never jumped off sides. He never had a pre-snap penalty. He wasn't responsible for guys not knowing where to line up. And so I don't understand. Now, I do want to ask, I have a question I want to ask you guys, but I do. Here's Johnny. I love it. Die bar in the house. Ooh, shout out to Douglie. I love it. I love when there's love and not hate.
Love.
In this whole Dolphins podcast land.
Right.
But so I've said this all along. I've defended Chris Grier to a fault and took a lot of heat for it. I was adamant, and I still stand by it, that I did not think that they needed to fire anybody at the end of last season. I felt that the first 2 seasons of those guys working together earned them a right to see if last season was an anomaly or if things were heading in the shitter. I didn't think they were going to head as far in the shitter and as fast in the shitter as they did, but I think they earned that right. Having said that, I just, like you, OJ, I was surprised that if they were going to only do one, that they made that decision when they met it. Now, we heard, I think it was Ian Rappaport reported that one of the, what? I don't even know what that is. I think one of the things that we heard was Chris Grier was asked what his plans were for the trade deadline, and he basically said he was waiting for phone calls, and there was no necessarily strategy of reaching out. That's hard for me to fathom.
Yeah. Come on.
That's hard for me to fathom. But I have now heard that not only from that report, but there have been some people locally that were told the same thing. So I don't know who's telling that story, but
Chris can say whatever he wants there, though, Big Seth. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna tell. I ain't gotta entertain these motherfuckers. You know what I mean, man? Like, I can say whatever I want to say in that time. Yeah, and hopefully it kind of throws them off, have them, give them something to talk about. I doubt that. I know Chris being in the job, as long as he's always active in whatever can happen for this football team, man. So there's no way he's just sitting around. Nobody that's been around that long is just sitting around. And the relationships that he has throughout the league have to be that good where you can reach out to anybody and these conversations flow. You know what I mean? They have to flow. I can't imagine that, Chris shows up, goes into his office like Marino does. Marino has an office at the practice facility, and he goes in there and he chills. And whenever they call him to come, he goes in and watches film and stuff. That doesn't sound like what Chris does in that facility.
I sure as hell hope it wasn't what he was doing.
No. And I'm just giving Danny a hard time, man. I love the fact that he's part
What does Danny do when he's sitting in his office? Like, what?
He's got an office though. I love it. I think he's got an office with no windows in case he needs to take a nap because he's old as fuck. But that's just I'm just giving him a hard time. But anyhow, I just can't imagine that. I think he's just I think that's tongue in cheek, man. Big Seth. You know what I mean?
Well, but it's interesting that he and Rappaport had a lot of stuff that he put out there. So I do find it interesting. I pushed back also. There was the part of his report was that multiple GMs told Ian Rappaport that Grier never wanted to trade his guys. And I was like, wait a minute, and I had a tweet about that. I was like, look at all the people that he traded. And Kyle, KFC indicated he felt that was something they were saying about this year. And I think we'll talk about the trade deadline too. I don't think that there was a need for a fire sale, but in any event, you can't go that long in that position and not have success winning playoff games. I think that is damning. But I want to ask all three of you guys, I would like to know what is, if you had to point to one thing, and clearly there were a multitude of things that when you make a decision that is that final, but if you had to point to the biggest reason why Chris Grier no longer has his job as the Dolphins GM, we'll start with Sevach. What would you think that was?
I think you already touched on it. It's the length of his tenure coupled with the lack of success. You know, I think we mentioned it. It might have been during I tried to tell you, I brought it up, that the only other GMs that had a tenure in the same ballpark as him, they all have Super Bowls on their resume. So I think ultimately that was what it was.
Interesting. What about you, Juice?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a results oriented business, man. And he puts the product out there. We've actually gambled on so many players under Chris Grier's watch that did not pan out. Older players that end up getting hurt. You know, you've really got to scout player. If you're bringing in players down here, especially in free agency, you really got to scout some dudes out that can handle South Florida, handle South Beach, handle the environment down here. Because honestly, it's not for everybody. It really isn't, man. You know, it's like you've got guys that come down here, they get paid, and we've seen it. It seems like they kind of relax and kind of chill out. You really need to go get guys, and I hate to say this, guys that, you know, are married with 5 or 6 kids that, you know what I mean, that got to go home right after work. You know, you can't go to South Beach. They can't go to Fort Lauderdale.
How often were you going home after work and sitting at home?
Hey, this ain't about him, Seth. This ain't about him.
I got it.
But he led the league in receptions.
Yeah, Seth. I'm gonna tell you this, Seth. But I was single with no kids either, man. You know what I mean? I'm a different animal, man. I was a different breed, bro. I was a different breed.
But it's what he did when he showed up, though.
But that's the point. That's the point. You know, whether you got 5 kids or no kids, or 12 all being born this year, it's like, are you a dog? And not that kind of dog.
Well, I mean, and you know, and some of these dudes, I mean, they appear to be dogs in other teams before they come here. You know, what happened to them, man? I'm gonna tell you what happened. South Florida softens you up, man. Look, I'm so soft right now, bro. I'm going to Ohio for Thanksgiving. I guarantee I will not be out of the house for more than 4.5 minutes. You know what I mean? That is South Florida at its finest, bro.
So you're saying that he just wasn't identifying the right guys for what it takes to be a winner in South Florida.
It's hard. It's hard, Big Seth. I mean, really, honestly, when you give guys a boatload of money, there's a lot of things to do here, a lot of things that can occupy your time. You know, it's not like we're in Buffalo or we're in, you know, Green Bay or someplace like that where pretty much ball's all you got there. You know, I know a lot of guys that play for Buffalo dipped up to Toronto a lot to kick it, but, you know, they're back home and, you know, back dealing with the elements and everything that they were dealing with there, man. But South Florida is a different animal, man. It's the same way for young guys too. You draft, you got to be careful with that situation. You know, older guys, you get in free agency, you got to be careful with that situation. But I think, you know, and it's also environment, man. Look, we know I played with Shula. That locker room environment was tense. You know, Jimmy Johnson's locker room was tense. You know, you gotta honestly at some point the old school coaching works in certain environments. It didn't work for Flores, but they didn't want to handle these new school kids didn't want to deal with that stuff. This is really a club med situation over there, man. I went down the damn slide when it first opened up in the facility. You know what I mean? And they got a slide and all this other stuff going on, man. I'm like, yo, this is I could do this for 20 years. You know, I could Jessica Nina this thing up in here for 17 more years up in here, you know? So it's like, I mean, it's got to be a tougher football environment because football is a tough ass sport. I always said football is a glorified prison. You know what I mean? Because it's an alpha male everywhere doing all this. These guys are kumbaya. They cool, man. It's just all relaxing there, man. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, to me, that tone is set by the head coach and not the.
I guess that's part of it.
The general
manager. You got guys that come in as dogs and they're like, oh well, shit, I could do this right here all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. So Doug, what about you? If you had to point to one thing that is the main reason why Chris Grier is no longer general manager of the Miami Dolphins, what would you say it is?
Drafting. He was not good at drafting. Like don't get me wrong, he made some good picks, but when you take the whole entire, 9 years I'll give him, he was just more misses than hits. And to me, if you want to be successful, you have to have that healthy rotation where you don't need to hit on free agents because you have the young up and comers at that rotation. And he missed on a lot. Trading up for Liam Eichenberg when Creed Humphrey was there, you could have stayed pat. Tanner Connor, not Tanner Connor, the Boston tight end, you took him instead of another. another offensive lineman. He missed on a lot of picks, and I think that really hurt. And it's like the fact that a lot of fans were like, "Ooh, Quinn Miners is still there," and he wouldn't take him, or "Ooh, so and so's still there," and he'll take a guy who's projected to be a third rounder in the second, whereas you still have a potential first rounder in the second, and he'll just reach. No, and then the thing you'll get is we had him higher on our board, and it's like, obviously your board's not good. It hasn't been good for a hot minute, and to me that's the problem. But he did hit on some, Xavier Howard and all those guys, but it's like he there's more misses than there were hits.
And Doug and Big Seth, I know you say this a lot of times, Seth, and I want you to finish this up for me, but we did hit on some draft picks, but we didn't keep them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We retain them.
Right. Well, that is absolutely a fair point. It's interesting and somebody just said what I was going to say. So a couple interesting things here in the chat. David Fernandez, we don't have an identity. I think that is fair. A lot of people are saying that, and that is something that I think the general manager and the head coach need to come up with together. And so the team not having an identity, or maybe having the wrong identity, is an issue. So Steve Burkett has, said his loyalty to a below average scouting staff. I don't, I know some of those guys is probably a little too close to home, but again, I think that when you start to talk about some of the things you guys pointed out to, whether it's the type of player or the ability of the player, eventually that falls on more than just the general manager. It's a reflection upon his staff. Just in the same way that if a head coach brings in a lousy group of position coaches, that's also on the head coach who chose those guys and hired those guys and allowed those guys to stick around. But True Blazer said what I would say, that the biggest reason he is not the general manager of this team right now is his what happened in the 2020 draft. That was the draft that, the team made a decision to tank. They stocked up on draft picks. They had 3 in the first round. They had the excitement that everyone's getting, that the Jets have right now. And they had an opportunity there were 5 quarterbacks there that were all considered potential franchise quarterbacks. The guy that we have, unfortunately, right now, if you had to rank the 5, would be 5th.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody, on anybody's charts, that anybody would put Tua above the other 4 guys. Juice, I wanted them to use that 30th pick on a second quarterback.
Yeah.
To me, Tua or Herbert, I can't say I told you this or told you that. I knew there were issues about Herbert or concerns. I knew there were issues and concerns about Tua. I said, let them decide. That's what they're experts on. Let those guys who are getting paid millions of dollars to make the decision, figure out which one of those 2 guys they like best, but draft somebody with that 30th pick. I really liked Hurts. I just felt the guy was a winner. I learned about Love probably during the draft process. I didn't know a whole lot about him, but I was like, draft one of those other 2 guys with that 30th pick and do the old Dallas Cowboys, Troy Aikman or Steve Walsh thing, and figure out which guy's a real dude and which guy you can trade for a shit ton. And I'm not saying that anybody's sitting here saying, oh, easy to say now, Seth. Juice can vouch. He disagreed with me, but I absolutely said that. Ultimately, my point here is that draft from top to bottom, the only 2 players left are the 2 players that Brian Flores apparently rode the hardest in Tua and Austin Jackson. They're the only 2 players left from that draft. One guy is a health risk because of concussions and other injuries, and he came in as a health risk, and he's, unfortunately having the worst season of his career. And he's got limitations, right? He's not a great athlete. He's got a below average arm. He's got some things he does that are very special, but you're having the same questions that you had when Ryan Tannehill was here, or some other quarterbacks. Like, wait, now we're 6 years into this thing. Do we not have the right guys?
Right.
And then the other guy can't stay on the field anymore. He's only 26, 27 years old. Austin Jackson cannot stay on the damn field. And there's nobody else from that draft. And to me, if you had drafted any one of those other quarterbacks, forget what you did with the rest of those picks. If you had any one of those other quarterbacks, this team would not be where they are right now. That's my thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can always say that. We're also kind of playing the results. I get that part. And I'm tell you this, Tua's had some fabulous years for this football team. It's the rest of the team that hasn't been as good along the way too, bottom line is this, you get guys in certain situations that have to go out there and perform, and they have to perform in the right time. What's the right time, Big Seth? Fourth quarter and December.
Nut cutting time.
Yes, right. Nut cutting time. What are you doing in nut cutting time? And we're not getting those kind of results when it comes to that position. And that's all that matters in that position. That's all that matters in that position, man. I don't care what you do in the first quarter. I don't care what you do in August preseason. I don't care what you do in September most of the time, unless your team's 0-5 in that month. But bottom line is this: what are you doing when we need you the most? And that's football right there, man. That's football right there. And it's not all him. Like, we've had some games this year where Tua's done enough for us to win. The defense hasn't. I get that.
Right.
That's part of the game as well. He's giving us a game-winning drive, quote unquote, and then defense couldn't hold it. San Diego game, all we got to do is make a stop. We win. Different games like that. So I get it. But when you make that type of money, 50 plus a year, the shit's gonna fall on you, man. It really is. It's the bottom line. And then you take up all the money. Tom Brady Tom Brady he took less to have a better squad.
Mm-hmm.
I would not take less if I was Tua, because it's first deal. You can't just your first next deal. You know what I mean? Then after that, you can be team friendly. Not the beginning, but at the same time, though, man. I just don't. We don't. They don't. I can't even tell if the players do have the confidence that if we need him to go down there and make a play, make a drive, extend a play, it's not going to happen for us, man. And we see it more and more now. It's worse now than it's ever been with him. When we see what happened in the Ravens game, things like that, the intentional grounding might be the most egregious shit I've ever seen from a quarterback with zero going on around him, man. Like, I mean, what is going on here, bro? You know what I mean? That right there was like, it's at a point right now, Big Seth and Doug and Sevach, that I don't know if he is confident himself back there. I heard his press conference the other day. He said he's got the confidence still, but I just don't see it, man. I just don't see it any, bros.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fair question. So one guy that we haven't talked about here, and we're 30 minutes into the show, and Doug, I know you've got limited time with us tonight, but we're 30 minutes into the show. What about the head coach? I mean, I guess we talked about it a little bit earlier. We were surprised. So what happens? We're spending all this time on Chris Grier. Chris is gone. Everybody had their little party, which was the silliest thing I'd ever seen. But you had your little party, the Fire Chris Grier shirts. You got to find some new merch now to buy and to wear. And
the banner's got to go. You got to cut the banner in half now.
Yeah. So Grier's gone. Here comes Buffalo, or here we go to Buffalo. Steve says Dolphins will win because it's the most Dolphin thing they could do is now to win. But Mike McDaniel is still the head coach. There's the rumors that he may remain the head coach even beyond the end of this year. Where do you stand with that? I mean, I know we touched upon it a little bit. I see you shaking your head, Doug. What do you think needs to happen here, and when?
And that's the thing, right? That was what was reported the end of the year. And then Barry Jackson said things are still being evaluated, which I was like, that seems to me to be more of a understanding of Mike McDaniel. I don't think it's a guarantee he's here till the end of the year. Like, if I had to put money on it, or if I had to come back and I said what I said, I don't think he coaches the Steelers game. I think he gets fired before the last 4 games. And I see a change there. My biggest knock with McDaniel, right, is 2022. He comes in, we do really well, we make the playoffs. Everyone's like, okay, we have something here. 2023, we take off like a rocket. Drop 70 on Denver, like we were just off and going. And then 2024, 2-6, and now we're sitting here at 2-7. My thing is, you look at the 2022 Miami Dolphins and you look at the 2025 Miami Dolphins, there's no difference in play calling, in the plays getting in late, in using timeouts, losing challenges, penalties, all of these things that your head coach is in charge of. Nothing has changed over 4 to 5 years. And that's the problem. So like, for the longest time, I think it was after the Bills game, I was like, Mike's got to go. Like, this is it. I don't give a crap. You gave him a contract extension. They did Tony Sparano wrong. They gave him a contract extension, fired him later that year. Like, it doesn't matter.
They don't care.
But then I kind of sat back and thought to myself, you should let Grier go and then let the new GM kind of look at Mike and let him decide. But there's no difference. He didn't grow. It's the same Mike McDaniel. It's the same press conferences. Like, he just had a press conference today where they asked him about playing Buffalo, and he was like, yeah, Buffalo, they score more points than us and they win. And I'm like, yeah, that has to be the dumbest thing that you can, like, are you kidding me right now? Like, or the one, like, to win the game, you have to win it and not lose it. I'm like, shut up. Like, I'm at the point with Mike McDaniel that I'm just like, shut up, man. Just if you got nothing to say, don't say anything. I can't with
Doug, did that change though? Were you all right with his press conferences before that?
At first, yeah. We're like, oh, he's quirky. He's funny. And now we're like, get the hell off the goddamn podium.
Winning fixes everything.
Exactly. Exactly.
As a head coach and a quarterback combo, they have had a rough year at the podium. That is for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That is for sure. And I don't listen, it is not, and Juice, you would know better than any of us here, but it is not, cannot be easy to have to stand up there and answer those questions. I tweeted today, we saw Bill O'Brien lose his friggin' mind when they asked him what he has to, what do you have to say to the fans with their 0-7 start, and he just lost his darn mind.
Yeah.
So I think that, McDaniel is always, he tries to give thoughtful answers, sometimes maybe a little too hard. Yeah. He is respectful. He's never really shitty with anybody in the room. And it's kind of I almost wish there was, Perk or somebody here right now, because I'm not trying to take shots, but it's a softer room than it's ever been. I mean, Juice, when you were playing and I worked in that building, well, not that building, but in a lesser building, and you had Armando and Jason Cole and Todd Archer and Joe Shad whatever we got now with Joe. And Greg Bedard following people home after, you had all kinds of stuff. I mean, those guys were killers. Those guys were straight up killers. And now I just think it's an easier room, but he's always
Mike softened up to them, man. They're like, they're buddies. They don't want to dislike him, man. He makes it nice for them, and I think that, even the most critical guys, they write tough articles. They don't ask tough questions in the in the media availabilities. You know what I mean? They're really nice to Mike when it comes to that. They might write some other stuff. And we had a couple writers like that before too, man. But honestly, they signed up for these positions. The quarterback, they signed up as the head coach. That shit comes with the territory, bro.
Heavy as the head that wears
you gotta
the crown,
when they come for you, you gotta be ready to come back for them, man. So guys have to come for them. I mean, it's just that's the nature of the beast, man. And there's some we had winning teams at times, and reporters were coming for us. Yeah, we were we'd be 7-2, and then they want to come up with some shit, and she was like, well, hell, we're 7-2. And you want to ask that question about like a third string tackle? What the hell is going on here?
They were breaking stories back then too. That was different. Yeah. Now it's there's three national guys that break all the stories. Yeah. And so it's just completely, here they're saying they don't ask the tough questions. I think sometimes they do, but it is a nice, I'm not criticizing. There's a lot of guys in that room that I like and respect. I just think it's a nicer group of, just in terms of their approach to covering the team.
Right. So that Florida media is way different, man. You see the tough stuff that goes on. You see what Aaron Glenn was going through in New York.
He creates some of his own issues there, though, Juice. He shows up with the battle armor for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
So Chris Grier's out. We're heading towards a trade deadline. I think with the dismissal of Grier, Champ Kelly steps in. There's this anticipation of fireworks. There's all kinds of rumors. Dolphins Twitter has their non-negotiable list. Then they're arguing over who's on the non-negotiable list. And Doug, I'm going to ask you to answer this question. If and when you have to dip, just let us know. You're not going to hurt our feelings. I know that you've got some other obligations, and this was a last minute, commitment that you made to us. So, I was not on the fire sale is necessary train. Yeah. And people get so excited for fantasy football and 5 draft picks, but who are those 5 guys going to play with, right? The Ricky Williams trade. You trade everybody for Ricky, and he shows up as a draft class of 1, and how the hell are you building your team? And so I guess my question to you, I'll start with you, Doug, is what were you hoping to see happen? Do you feel the Dolphins did enough? And what do you think about Mike McDaniel answered the question today? It was Mike McDaniel. It was Champ Kelly, and it was Brandon Shore making those decisions in communication, direct communication. He made sure to say direct communication with ownership.
I didn't expect a fire sale. Anyone who expected a fire sale, like the Jets, and the Jets really wasn't even a fire sale. They traded like what 3 or 4 players. It wasn't that big of a fire sale. It was talent, like they traded talent, but it wasn't that crazy. I didn't expect that. I think at best I expected Chubb, Phillips, and then once I started hearing Minka's name getting thrown around, it made sense. But I also, Champ Kelly is trying to get the GM job, so he's not going to just give him away. So I didn't expect Chubb and Minka to go for like a 6th or a 5th. I expected him to try to get something for these guys, like he did with Jalen Phillips, giving us that 3rd. Now we have 5 picks so far in the top 100, which is really good. But you hit the nail on the head, man. Like you have to build around something, and the fact that they came out and said Sealer was not up for trading, and same thing. Well, like you have Sealer, you have Achane, you have Waddle, you have this young core that you can definitely still build around. And if you try to jettison it all to get draft picks, it's not the draft is a lottery. Like it literally is a lottery. You see these players, they have great numbers in college, and you watch the film and you're like, oh, that's a can't miss pick. And then all of a sudden they suck. And it's like, oh, well, it's the transition. Not everyone transitions to the pros as equally as quick. Like people are already giving up on Jonah and Kenneth Grant, even though they've played like 9 games. Like we need to really let these things develop. They want that instant success. And like you look at the Jets, who now have 5 first-round picks in the past 2 years. They've been there before. They've gotten Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, and that equated to nothing. All of this stuff has happened before. It's not about where or how many, it's about who you pick, and it's about the process of evaluating these players. So, I'm glad that they didn't do a fire sale. It sucks that Phillips is gone. He was one of my favorite Dolphins. I honestly think, and I keep saying that he's probably with the Eagles is going to get 7 sacks. I think his sack total is going to shoot up because you saw with Vic Fangio, he had 6.5 sacks in 8 games. And then under Anthony Weaver, he's barely doing anything. But the team as a whole on defense, we were 27th last year in sacks. This year we're 22nd. We were number 3 under Vic Fangio. So I think at the end of the year, you're going to have Jalen Phillips around double-digit sacks for the first time because, they're just going to, and plus he has some great D linemen next to him. Right. But yeah, I didn't expect a complete fire sale. I think they did what they needed to. Obviously, they got calls about Jalen Waddle, but, they probably wanted what Sauce got, and that's fair to ask. Jalen Waddle right now, I think, is the number 8th receiver in receiving yards. So why wouldn't you want, that type of pick for a top 10 receiver? But again, you want to build around these guys. Why are you going to jettison everybody? So it made sense to me that they didn't do a fire sale. It was smart. It was very smart by Kelly.
Yeah, my question is this, like the fact that the Jets were able to get what they got for their players, who on our roster, maybe other than Achane, would garner that type of those type of draft picks, man? You think what would we ask? What could we possibly been asking if we were to trade Waddle that teams turned it down? We don't know what was asked and what was offered for Waddle, and teams obviously didn't take the bait if he was out there at all. Achane's probably the only guy that could, in my opinion, that would garner a 1st-round pick, or maybe even possibly 2 first-round picks. Who else on our roster do you guys think would be 1st-round pick compensated? Who? I mean, it's tough to pinpoint anybody.
Yeah. I think Waddle's the only guy that would be close, and clearly, well, I shouldn't say clearly, but I have to imagine the offer wasn't there.
Well, it might have been one, but maybe they wanted more. Maybe we wanted more than maybe there was a 1st-round offer there, but they maybe wanted 2 or 1st and a 2nd, whatever it might be. But other than that, though, I can't see anybody on our roster that everybody's like, oh yeah, we'll give you a 1st-round pick for that guy.
I agree. I agree with you there. I am surprised the Jets got what they got, especially for Sauce. Man. I mean, I think that was
well. What it boils down to is all the pressure now on the GM and Aaron Glenn there. You know what I mean? You got 5, like Doug said, 5 1st-round picks in the next 2 years. And we had 3 in 1 year. We talked about the Tua, the Austin Jackson, Igbenogany. That was. I mean, I'm gonna give Tua credit for being pretty good. He was solid enough, but that was a shitty first round for us.
Mm-hmm.
It was a shitty first round for us, man.
The whole draft, given what we had and what the goal was a disaster looking back.
Yep.
You really could have destroyed that draft with those 3 picks in the first round because of what we accumulated. Now, you got to give Chris credit for that, right? We got to give Chris credit for getting the picks, but then we got to give him credit for fucking wasting them at that point.
1,000%. And you can't tie Mike McDaniel to any of that. Any of that, what happened that year or the following year. Mike McDaniel has no ownership of either of those two things. So I agree with you there. And I also, maybe nobody wanted to give a first round pick or whatever it might, they might have been asking, if they even were asking anything for Waddle. But I understand the Dolphins not being willing to give it up. And I just think that he is your number one receiver right now. A lot of people question whether or not he was a number one receiver, but we see what happens as soon as whenever Tyreek Hill is not in the lineup, Waddle's numbers go up significantly, and he becomes a critically important player to this offense when Tyreek Hill's not in the lineup. And we talked about that in previous live shows about what Tyreek's absence would do to the offense as a whole. And so he's playing really good football and probably better football than his numbers even indicate because of, the subpar performance of Tua and the offensive line and maybe some questionable play calling. So I think Waddle's a really good football player, and the contract is structured in a way, well, even though he got paid, I think he's got a cap friendly number the next 2 years. And I don't play capologist, but I think they say what, 9 million and 11 million over the next 2 years. I mean, those are, in this day and age, that is, for a player of his caliber, those are really good numbers. There's no reason to give up. If the goal of firing your general manager, potentially firing your head coach, is to improve your team, then why would you take away one of the key components of a young player who's talented, who's relatively healthy, and who's on a friendly contract?
There you go, though, Big Seth, though. There you go, though. Relatively healthy is right, but he hasn't been relatively healthy, though, as either. And that's had to play a part in what's going on with Waddle as well. Waddle has been in and out for most of his career here.
But not in a way like Jalen Phillips. I mean, Jalen Phillips just had back-to-back catastrophic injuries, where it cost him the season. And
that's why we only got a third-round pick for him.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. And a third-round pick, that could be a very, very low third-round pick. So, that's fair as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens from here. Fellas, do we have any shot against Buffalo? Do you want them to have a shot against Buffalo?
Any given Sunday.
Only way, and Mike McDaniel, I think, even said it today, that the one time they did beat Buffalo was looking to the next opponent, and look past the Dolphins when the Dolphins snuck up on them, like Mike's first year. Buffalo's firing all cylinders right now. They really are. They're back to being the Buffalo Bills. They had a couple hiccups earlier in the season, but, Josh Allen and that crew, the defense is back to being rock solid again, man. They're going to take over Hard Rock Stadium. The Bills Mafia is coming down here, and they're going to do what they do. They're going to be at the elbow room, and I'm going to go by there and flip them all off and then keep it moving, things like that. No, I really don't think we have a chance, Big Seth, and I think that we're going to be underdogs the rest of the season, no matter who we play.
Well, sure, we've earned that. Maybe when we play the Jets.
Well, I get it. I mean,
we do get to play the Jets.
We were big underdogs against underdogs. Teams that were
Browns,
2 and whatever. It's a damn shame that we were such dogs against so many teams and touchdown plus dogs, which is hard to imagine in the NFL, no matter who you're playing and against who you're playing. But yeah, we have. There's hopefully they go out there and competitive, and like these guys want to talk about. Hopefully in the fourth quarter, we got a chance to go out there and find a way to win. But hell, it could be over, by 2:30 on Sunday.
Steve said he's putting $100 straight up for Miami to win. I love it. Too good. So I'm going to, rather than asking that question on the roundtable here, I'm going to skip ahead because I want to get to this segment. If Doug has something prepared, are you prepared for the I tried to tell y'all segment?
I could probably think of something.
All right, well, you kick it off, and then we'll come to you.
Yeah,
you got to be a part of it. OJ McDuffie, what'd you try to tell us?
Oh, Big Seth, I don't know what I tried to tell you, man, because I can't find what I tried to tell you.
Sevach, What did you try to tell him?
I'm just playing.
Okay, all right.
I tried to tell y'all that I was tired of starting over as a Dolphins fan. I mean, ever since they fired the great Don Shula, we've been starting over from head coaches to GM, starting with Jimmy Johnson, the narcissist who thought he could do it all himself. He had, the amazing Eddie Jones, but I doubt he actually used Eddie's wisdom for anything. But Jimmy, he did some great things. He got some players like Zach Thomas and JT while being the GM, but he couldn't coach worth a damn, just straight shitty. Then on to Dave Wanstead, whom I love, but, didn't get anything done either with an amazing defense and the best run game in football at the time. Time management was always a problem with him and being way too conservative. Dave had control over personnel as well. And then you get Jim Bates, he's on an intern basis, after Wands was fired. And they also had Eddie Jones, despite the fact they were probably calling their own shots. And then you mix in some Rick Spillman. Ooh. I kind of knew Bates wouldn't get the permanent job. So, it's kind of okay there. So then we go get the hottest coach in football, Nick Saban. He had Randy Mueller. I doubt Nick took too much advice from anybody. I don't think he does that with anybody. Who knows, though?
He listened to JT.
Yeah, give me a second. Yeah, I get it. And Nick was a great college coach, as we all know, but couldn't handle gams, grown-ass men in the locker room. Jeff Skazina, he told us that. He said, on our podcast that he just couldn't handle the grown-ass men we had him on with, Big Seth. And then, of course, Cam Cameron, the Ginn family. We all know how that all turned out. Followed by Sperano and Jeff Ireland. We love Sperano. Todd Bowles is there for a brief run with Ireland as well. Next you got Joe Philbin for a few years with Dennis Hickey as GM. Now stay with me here. Dan Campbell finished that season out. Now we get to Gase, Flores, and McDaniel, who all had Chris Grier as a GM. I don't tell you guys how the last decade has been for us. So what I tried to tell y'all was that I was tired of starting over. But I'm okay with it now, man. I'm not getting any younger, and we are definitely not getting any better. So if we have to blow this shit up, blow it up, man. I don't care. One piece is falling. We shall see what happens to the rest. I try to tell you.
That was like some M. Night Shyamalan plot twist at the end. I didn't see that shit coming at all. Outstanding stuff by OJ McDuffie. Douglie, how you feeling? Are you ready to try to tell us something?
I got one. For people who follow me on Twitter and who follow my channel, I tried telling you guys Chris Grier was not going to make it to the end of the season. I tried to tell you October 6th. I even pulled the tweet up to get the exact date. I tried to tell you that someone got to go, and it had to be Chris Grier. That man who sat there and told us, you're more worried about the offensive line than I am, over the past 3 years has the third least amount of money spent on free agent offensive linemen, the third least amount of draft capital spent on offensive linemen. And here we sit, James Daniels. I was excited about James Daniels. He played one snap, if anything, and he's gone.
Where is
Austin Jackson hurt again. It's one thing after another with the offensive line. And then you got Tua coming out last year saying, I could throw the ball quick. They made that man come out and say that. For a fact that's not what he was thinking. He was trying to help out his offensive lineman. I tried to tell you, Chris Grier was not surviving this season. But I got to get out of here, guys. I appreciate you. Having me on.
We appreciate you, man. That was great. Great stuff. You did try to tell us, and I guess you were right.
You were right. So, you were right, bro.
He is the king of Dolphins YouTube, whether you like it or not. Douglie DoWrong. Keep doing great stuff, man. We appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.
Doug.
All right, be well.
Later, dude.
Later.
But we're not leaving, so now if we see the numbers just plummet, we know everybody was here for Douglie.
Took him with me.
What did you try to tell us, brother?
You're not going to believe this, but Douglie took mine. But here's the good news. It actually turned out because I kind of had a twofer, but they all wrapped in together. So let me tell you a quick story. Well, and at first, I guess, let me preface these comments by expressing my great appreciation and respect for Chris Grier. I want to thank him for all of the time that he dedicated to the franchise. I think I'm glad you talked about it, Seth, because some people don't realize he was with the organization for like 25 years.
Right.
Worked his way up from the bottom. So I want to start there. But now, let me paint a picture for you guys. It is the night of the 2018 NFL Draft. I'm sitting there in front of my television with my wife. We're dressed in the colors. I won't say with the order that I would normally say them in, Juice, out of respect for you. And I'm thinking at this moment, because remember, this is 2018. We just came out of 2017, kind of a lost season. Tanny re-injured his knee. Jay Cutler came in, the whole thing, little disappointing. Exactly. I'm thinking at this moment, we're coming in, we've got all these quarterbacks. I'm like, my gosh, there's a handful of these guys. We might be able to get in position to take one. So we watch them go. Mayfield, Darnold, Allen. This is where I got scared because the word around the campfire had been that Adam Gase loved him some Josh Rosen. So how excited was I when the Cardinals traded up ahead of Miami and took him? I'm thinking at this moment, there is no possible way this team does not take Lamar Jackson here. Because I don't know how you guys viewed it. I'd love to get your opinion of that night. But when I was looking at it, I'm thinking we need a quarterback, and there is not a better player available in this draft, at least at that moment, than Lamar Jackson. So I was thinking in that moment, that's the time you need to take a big swing. As I love to say, you never hit home runs if all you do is bunt. And unfortunately, we know how that night went. That pick did not go to Lamar Jackson. He took Minkah Fitzpatrick, which is fine. Minkah's a good player. But it was a really safe pick in a time we kind of needed to swing for the fences. And I think that ultimately not taking that big swing when we needed to is what led us to where we are right this moment. So I tried to tell you, we should have drafted Lamar Jackson.
That was the shift. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's he went way back. The 2018 draft. All right. Well, you tried to tell us, and it's a fair one. Yeah.
Right.
Lamar Jackson.
We just saw why we didn't. We saw the results of not drafting his ass Thursday,
no.
didn't we?
It is so fitting, just so fitting that we just played them too, and it was Lamar's comeback game from injury. Like,
speaking of comebacks, I will say Tua's best game of his entire career was against Lamar Jackson. So I just want to say that.
Not Lamar's fault though.
No, not at all.
He did his thing in that game, boy.
Exactly. And of course, while there's no guarantee that we would have saw the same level of success, multi MVP, what I can tell you is we probably wouldn't be where we are right now.
Well, because he's today's star quarterback, man.
I would have been much better off knowing we could have gotten Lamar. I tried to tell y'all that the Miami Dolphins are still trying to win games in 2025. And I know it. They ain't doing a very good job of it. But damn it if they're not trying. I tried to tell y'all that Tua Tagovailoa, as long as he's healthy, is going to be the starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins throughout the rest of this season. Tua said he hadn't heard that about he's playing for his job. And the reason he hasn't heard it, because he's not. He's the starting quarterback. Quinn Ewers, he ain't going to be the starting quarterback. I'm sorry for all of you people that think that he should be. We need to see what he's got. They see what he's got. He ain't ready to be that dude. Zach Wilson has never been that dude, and he's still not ready to be that dude. He lost his number 2 spot to Quinn Ewers at one point, for crying out loud. I tried to tell y'all they're still trying to win games. They did not have a fire sale. They made a smart trade with Jalen Phillips, as much as those of us who really like Jalen, both as a person and as a player, maybe even more as a person, not because he wasn't a great player or a good player, but he was an incredible person. But it was a smart trade. That wasn't a trade that a team that is tanking makes. That was a trade that a team makes to try to get out in front of a big payday, to try and take advantage of value, to try not to have to, have a player that you're going to invest in and could, again, have an injury where he misses a tremendous amount of the season. That was a smart trade. But if they had traded him and Chubb, and you've got Chop Robinson, who you've got Chop that's sitting there, in concussion protocol, who are they going to go line up? Right. This team is still trying to win games in 2025. You're hearing that Mike McDaniel is safe. I can tell you that I believe that Mike McDaniel is coaching to keep his job. Mike McDaniel is not on board with just losing the rest of the season so that he can have a high draft pick for Champ Kelly or somebody else to make. And he may not even be here for it. The Miami Dolphins are still trying to win games in 2025, whether you like it or not. That's what happens inside of a building. In almost every case in a professional football organization, people get paid to win. I told you guys, you can't go look Zach Sealer in the face and say, hey, we're going to give this kid a shot. We're going to lose games because we want to get a good draft pick. You can't go look Bradley Chubb in the face. You can't go look Minkah Fitzpatrick in the face. You can't go look Aaron Brewer in the face. You can't go look Jalen Waddle in the face and say, we're not going to try our best, but we still want you guys to act like professionals who are getting paid millions of dollars. It doesn't work. And more than anything, Mike McDaniel wants to win games because he wants to prove that he can continue to win football games and that he deserves to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So I believe this team is still going to try and win games. If you're rooting against them, don't get mad at Juice and I if we celebrate a win.
That's
we're going to celebrate wins. We like to see the Dolphins win. They can win in the draft by picking good players, as Douglie said earlier, but they're going to try and win on the field. I don't know how well they're going to do it. I don't know that they're going to be successful doing it, but they're still trying to win football games in 2025, whether you like it or not. I tried to tell y'all. That's what I got.
You sure did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Yeah, they better, man. Look, Seth, I'm not wasting all my damn hours of the day on Sunday, man. They ain't trying to win the damn game, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just told you I live near South Beach.
Right. He's got better stuff to be doing, you know.
Better things I could be doing. Think about it. It was in Stephen Ross's quote that Champ Kelly, he thanked him for stepping in and that, winning is still a priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The fact that Mike McDaniel still has his job tells me that they still want to see what he can do. Can he turn this thing around? And by turning it around, it's can he show that the team doesn't quit on him and he can still take his $50-something million quarterback and all of these other players that they've invested in and get them to be the best versions of themselves? I just think that that's what they're looking to see. What was it? I'm sorry, Sevach.
Oh, that's cool. I just had one question real quick. It was from earlier. Why do you think they went with Champ Kelly and not Marvin Allen for the interim role?
It's a great question. We haven't heard anything from Marvin Allen. I mean, even Mike McDaniel, who was in the room making the decisions at the deadline. So I don't, there hasn't been an announcement, but it just sounds to me like he's not, whether it's by his own choice or whether it's just decisions that they've made without officially making decisions. But it, doesn't seem like he's involved, at least not at that capacity.
That's
I love that, our owners talking about, trying to win games, because we know that wasn't the case when the prior regime was here. You know what I mean? So
not at the start of it. Absolutely. Correct. It became the case, but they wanted it. It was that whole tank for Tua or whoever they were tanking for. Yeah. That was the clear decision that was made. I mean, when you look at that roster in the opening day of 2019, that was not an organization that was trying to win games. And we understand there's a lawsuit out there and some other alleged things that exist, and somebody else will have to decide what's real and what isn't. Correct. But clearly they were not trying to win games. But I believe that they are trying to win games. Justin just said in there, Juice, what's your thoughts on Chris Shula for head coach? I know McVay is very high on him. I would love it, but also understand the pressure that he would be under.
Yeah, man.
Good question.
That's a great question. I talked about that with somebody earlier today. And it'd be great. What a great story that'd be to have Chris Shula come here. I just worry about the pressure on him, pressure on the organization. He hasn't been a head man, but we've had a bunch of guys that haven't been head men. So who knows, man? I just, bottom line is this: when you got somebody that young, you got to have a bunch of great guys around you to with support and personnel and stuff, man. But what a great story that would be. To have
it would be incredible. Like, right? I mean,
be down here in Miami, man. I would love it. And he'd get our full support if they made that call for it.
Oh yeah, that'd be the feel good story of the summer.
Yeah. So I've got I'm looking at some of these names in the chat. I have a couple thoughts here. And also let me say this, and I tried to tell y'all, is that the team is still trying to win games. I'm not necessarily advocating that they keep Mike McDaniel. I think we need to see what happens in these next 8 games. But I have been I hope very clear on the fact that while there are absolutely failures during Chris Grier's tenure. I'm not saying the entire thing was well, ultimately, I guess, if you look at the body of work and the goal is to win playoff games, but I think there were good things. I also think that he was blamed for everything, which wasn't fair. The biggest issues we have with the Miami Dolphins right now, to me, fall on the shoulders of coaching more than they do somebody sitting upstairs in air conditioning, in my opinion. That's my opinion. So, all right.
I agree. Yeah.
A couple things that are in here.
Let's address some of the stuff in the chat.
Yeah. Steve, Donna Ponte. Yes. Somebody said Aponte. I'm sure they meant Donna Ponte. Yes, she did work here previously. Yes, she was heavily handed during the Tannenbaum / Joe Philbin regime. I do not think that that's a good fit. Dawn is clearly a very smart and very experienced personnel.
She's with the league now, right? She's with the league office now, right?
Yes, administrator. Yeah. I do not think that that is the person that I would want for the Miami Dolphins to have running the operation. So, yeah, that is my thought there. Darren Rizzi, I can't possibly see that. They didn't think it made sense here previously. He had an opportunity with the Saints. They didn't think it made sense there. I don't see Darren Rizzi being the head coach.
Very few of those interns, though, Seth, get a chance to continue on, though, do they? Unless you got to really knock it out of the ballpark, man.
That's fair. And maybe in a few years. Well, we saw it with the Raiders, right? So for a year, and then absolutely. So that's a fair point. But I just don't think Rizzi isn't the direction that I would go in. And not that I'm even necessarily looking at. So Lane Kiffin. So that's an interesting one. I had this conversation with Dave Hyde today because he wrote, and I know Lane Kiffin is a name that people are starting to get some buzz around, certainly at the collegiate level. And I don't think any of these NFL teams can compete with an SEC school that's going to pay him a whole lot of money. Dave wrote that he had NFL head coaching experience. I'm like, hey, he went 4-12 with the Raiders, and then 1-3 his next season with the Raiders, and then he was fired, and then he was back in college ball. Do you think if Mike McDaniel was handed a collective, a college team, and a collective, and the ability to recruit, and I think he's a great recruiter. Every player that comes here loves Coach Mike when they come in. Mike is cool. I think that Mike McDaniel could be a great college coach. Gimmicky offenses can be very successful at the college level. We've seen that happen. And so I think that why would we have a Lane Kiffin just because he went 4-12 with the Raiders? Mike McDaniel was a far more successful head coach in the NFL than Lane Kiffin was. So, did he become a better NFL head coach based on – I don't know. And I just – for all the people that say, look at all the coaches that were here and we let go, whether it's from Todd Bowles to Dan Campbell, those guys took a period of time before they got their chance to be head coaches again. Todd Bowles had a very rough time with the Jets before he got to Tampa. And so it's like, if you're not going to give Mike McDaniel a chance to fail and then succeed and grow, then why would you give somebody else who failed? Why all of a sudden is that person now exciting to bring in? That's my thought there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Jason Garrett.
Yeah. I like Jason.
Interesting there. It was a great episode, by the way, Dave.
Yeah, it was. All right. And I also think Jason's enjoying his job that he has on TV too. I mean, a lot of times it's hard to make guys work, 8 days a week instead of just the weekend gigs that they have nowadays, making really, really good money, especially former head coaches that are probably still getting paid by an organization.
That's a fair point. But do you think he'd be a good head coach again?
I think he is. I think he's super smart. I think he's surrounded himself with some great people. A lot of times when you're out of a job is when you learn a lot being out of coaching.
Right.
And then, and then you run into different circles now where you'd be able to hire different staff. A lot of guys that were on your staff before are probably working somewhere else. Some of the guys that are sitting at home, they're waiting on you to get the gig now. They're like, hey, I can't wait for you to get back in there, Jason. I'm sitting at home, eating Cheetos. I need a gig,
Chips. You got a clicker in one hand and chips in the other.
Man. So, yeah.
And I just said, I talked about a failure. Jason Garrett was not a failure in Dallas.
No,
I mean, he had some very successful seasons. They didn't achieve in the way that people wanted him to. And I can't imagine what coaching underneath Jerry Jones has to be like. That has to be a very toxic situation, or certainly at least a very difficult one. That would be a guy, and I'm not advocating for that, but if the Dolphins were to make a change and he was a name that became of interest, I would think that would be an interesting guy to explore.
Yeah.
If he was ready to come in and seize those strawberries, yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, David said he was ready to run through a wall after he listened to that episode.
What about you, Seth, about Gruden? I see Gruden on there. What about Gruden?
So, Gruden, thank you very much for throwing that one in there. I got to touch it. So, if we were just in a vacuum talking about coaching acumen, I think John Gruden would be. John Gruden is a Super Bowl winning head coach. Granted, Tony Dungy built up a team, and then he took that team and was able to get them over the hump. But he also was building a good team with the Raiders. I think John Gruden is probably a really good head coach.
Yeah.
But there's this whole other thing that you cannot ignore. We cannot, just because time has passed, just because he's an absolute blast to follow on Twitter and the stuff he's doing with Barstool is fabulous, you can't ignore the things that he wrote in those emails.
Correct.
And so, and forget what I think, 53 guys in that locker room and however many men on that coaching staff, many of whom are men of color,
correct,
would have to, would have to be able to go to work there and know in the back of their mind that those things were always said. Whether or not it was fair for the NFL to release them, it has been released. The emails were written, and you can't just shake that off.
Yeah.
Does that mean he doesn't deserve another chance? I don't know.
You know how many guys we play with that we know have those same feelings, though, man?
Well, so that's why I wanted to ask you. And so I'm just saying that you can't ignore that. You can't just pretend those things didn't happen. But I'm glad you asked that question, Juice, because it's a more relevant question for you than it is for me.
Yeah. And I think no matter what, we go in the locker room with a bunch of guys that we don't all we want to do is win. Honestly, all we ain't got to go home with anybody. We ain't got to go to dinner with anybody. We want to be the person that gives the best chance of winning. And honestly, just between me and you, and I have no evidence. I felt Jimmy had the same feelings. You know what I mean? And that's just me. That's just my personal feelings, man. Just the way I thought that he was. And I have no evidence of that. I just don't. One, I don't like the guy, but I think that's part of the reason I don't like him, because he just had that feel to me. And I have no evidence in that. I'm not trying to slander the man. But at the same time, though, I mean, hell, we see guys now on football teams that we know are that way, and people still they line up next to them and they go to work and they go home.
Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic. I guess what I'm hearing from you is, if you were playing for the Miami Dolphins and you felt that John Gruden was going to make the football team better, that you would go to work and do your job.
Correct.
And you would be okay with it.
Well, hell, what are the guys on the team right now going to do on the contract? They're going to, I'm going to opt out.
But are you going to get the best out of them? Are they going to feel away? And so
yes, you will get the best out of them, because you're out there playing for your almighty dollar, bro. You're out there playing for your almighty dollar, man. No matter what, no matter who's calling the plays, no matter who the head man is, when you get on the field, man, it's all about getting shit.
It was just like you were saying, Seth. These guys, they're not playing to lose; they want to win.
I agree.
They're going. And we've all had bosses we didn't agree with or didn't get along with. Yeah. You got to show up and go to work.
Yeah, and they some of these bosses put you in tough situations. And I think no matter what, hopefully they got a veteran group of guys that they could talk to a little bit. I doubt they'll help in the process. Look, we're talking about this shit, man. And Mike's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? Mike's not going anywhere yet. So
not
this
week.
Yeah. Mike's not going anywhere yet, man. But if something were to happen with Mike, then these are all great questions and all solid candidates. Definitely some guys to talk about.
Yeah, I mean that is probably the most fair part of it. Is like we're talking about. Although we've seen this organization try to hire a coach when they had a coach on staff, so we've seen that as well. Who's that Lenny Kravitz looking dude? He's happy as F, bro. I dig it. That's Sevach. It's the legendary Sevach, man. You don't know Sevach, you need to go see Sevach. You got to raise your profile again. He was the daily dad joke guy, and he's the producer for the Fish Tank. So he's our guy. Sevach. There was something else. Okay, MG Olivia. Is that like another handle for Mike Olivia? I don't know. Stephen Ross is the founder of Rise. If he hires Gruden, it's bad optics. So there are the optics element of it that he would have to deal with. I think some people might say Stephen Ross has aligned himself with other people too, and ultimately he's going to make a decision that he's going to make.
Stephen Ross did fundraisers for Donald Trump at his, at his house. Come on, I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, so I think if he decides that's the guy he wants, but what I will say is that John Gruden was also in a lawsuit with the National Football League, and that might be the biggest issue that he has of getting another job as a head coach of an NFL team, because we know how the Shield and how the owners, right? It's a franchise and franchisor, we know how they operate. And if collectively they don't think, that he belongs back in the league, then that's going to be a tougher nut to crack.
For sure.
So that's my thought. Mike Tice, there's a name I haven't heard in a minute. Mike Tice there. So, well, hey, good stuff. It was awesome to have Douglie. We had a really good chat. I didn't bring my good keyboard here, so I did my best to be involved. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I said we'd be answering questions. Are there any other good questions that we missed? Because we got into a pretty good juice. I wish Dave Wanstead gave a chance to Quentin Spotwood back in the day. What an athlete who never got a chance. I don't know that I remember him.
Yeah, I don't think I do either.
I guess D-Dubs didn't give him enough of a chance. Yeah. I got to go back and look that one up, Steve.
Seth, we ran into a lot of big-time athletes on that team that, that weren't, I don't even know, I won't say smart enough, but just couldn't get on the field for a lot of different reasons.
Absolutely. The boys working overtime tonight. We are, Dive Bar. We are, man. Sometimes you just got to get after it. So that being said, that might be our I don't know if that was a last call. Was that a Dive Bar last call? It was telling us you ain't got to go home, but you sure as hell got to get the hell out of here. Hey, really quickly, I want to bring this up, and I probably closed it out. So we haven't hit the charts here in the U.S. in quite some time, but we got guys in Mexico. I know Emilio was in here earlier. Honduras, Panama, Sweden, Japan. We've been hitting all of the top.
Killing it in Honduras. We're killing it in Honduras.
I love telling Travis when we're whooping his ass in somewhere like Honduras. So for anybody who's in any one of these countries that's been supporting us, thank you for it's one of the coolest things for me when we started this podcast was getting on those apps and seeing those little red dots all over the globe, man. And there's two people in Indonesia listening to the Fish Tank and me and Juice going at it about whether or not, he got the red carpet rolled out for him as a first round draft pick. So again, just really appreciate everybody who's here in the chat. Really appreciate everybody from wherever you are in the world that you continue to dive in. If you haven't listened to the Jeff Scanina episode, check that one out. If you don't remember Jeff, he was a grizzly, grumpy SOB, and we loved him for it. And he doesn't back down from it. We named the episode Jeff Scanina. We were a bunch of degenerates. And he texted me and said, I love the title. It's perfect. So that's all you need to know about Jeff. It was absolutely great.
What they also need to know is this dude raises rodeo bucking bulls. Bucking bulls, man. Talk about that. I couldn't wait to get into that part of it.
You were so excited about that.
I was.
Why did I bury that?
I've been to PDR a few times now, so I'm in with, pro bull riding now, Big Seth. You know me, dog.
Yeah, you definitely are, man. Yeah, raising bucking bulls, showing dogs. I mean, he's a true Renaissance man, that Jeff Scanina.
Good stuff,
Too good. Juice, get us out of here, man.
Everybody, thanks for diving in, everybody.